Hello, vinyl community. This is Mike with TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks, and right now I'm going to be doing a video which is a response to a challenge by two other members of the VC. One of them is David from Garage Geeks, the Garage Geek channel, and the other one is Guz69. Now, what this is about is the three of us decided to challenge each other with some records that we figured might be out of each other's comfort zones. And so the one I challenged them, and what we were supposed to do is take those records or the music from those records and listen to them for an entire week, twice a day, and then come back and report on what we felt about the ones that the others have recommended. So the one that I challenged them to listen to was this one here, the Jones Sisters, Original Songs of Perpetual Grace Limited. Now, Perpetual Grace Limited was a series that ran for one season. It was a series that apparently it was with a streaming service that didn't do very well, and so a lot of people didn't watch it, but it's actually a very great series starring Ben Kingsley as the main character. A couple of other noticeable actors are also in there, and it's an interesting kind of a comedy drama adventure series, which might be a little hard for a lot of people to get because it kind of messes around with your head a little bit and everything. But the music from it, I remember watching the show and thinking, wow, I love that song, I wonder who that is. And they'd play these different songs, and it turned out they were all from the same band, the Jones Sisters. Now, the Jones Sisters is actually a made-up band for the show, which consists of the director, it consists of a couple of other artists from different bands like Bobby Bear Jr. from Guided by Voices, another member from Iron and Wine, and so on. So anyway, I love the music here, so that is why I decided to challenge them with this particular one. It's kind of an alternative country sound. Now, Dave will probably be familiar with this type of music, where Guz may not be so much. Anyway, it's interesting to see what their reactions to this is going to be. Guz has already posted his reaction, which you can see on his channel, and I'm looking forward to hear from David's review of this too. So, the records that they challenged us, both me and each other, to listen to. David from the Garage Geek channel challenged us to listen to Gorercki's Symphony No. 3, which is also known as a Symphony of Sorrowful Songs. The version he wanted us to listen to was with Dawn Upshaw as the soprano singer. So when I first heard that, I thought, well, I'm not too much into opera. That's kind of what I expected. It was the soprano was going to have kind of an operatic voice, not something that appeals to me. I love classical music, but I do not care for very much opera. Now, there's one here or there that I enjoy, but typically I don't care for it. Well, I was pleasantly surprised when listening to this. Let me first tell you a little bit about the symphony. Gorercki is a modern composer. He actually used to compose a lot of dissonant and experimental type classical songs, classical type music, very discordant. But as time went on, he moved to a more melodic and more of a minimalistic style than what he had before. And this particular symphony was done kind of during that transition. So what you're seeing here in this is you're seeing a lot of melodic and non-dissonant styles, but using kind of a more modernistic way of composing. Anyway, maybe it will be a little bit clearer as I go on about this. But the symphony is made up of 3 excellent movements. They're all in a lento style, and lento actually means a slow, kind of a mournful style. Now, most symphonies, as most of you know, usually have fast and slow movements. This one is made up of 3 slow movements, which makes it unique among a lot of classical music. And the three movements are based on 3 different songs that have kind of a mother-child theme to them. So knowing that, there are 3 movements. And the first movement is called lento sostenuto tranquillo, which means slow, sustained, and tranquil, and is the longest movement at 27 minutes long. That seems kind of scary, just seeing that it's 27 minutes long. It's based on a lament from Mary, the mother of Jesus. The lament was written somewhere in the 15th century. So it's basically Mary's expression of grief over losing her son. In this one movement alone, there are 3 distinct sections, though they're all kind of melded together. So unless you're really listening, you may not notice the 3 different sections throughout the 27 minutes. The first section is based on an 8-part canon. I don't know if you know what a canon is, but basically what it is one of those songs like, well, we'll make it simple, like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, where one group starts singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and then another group joins in at the beginning while the first group continues singing the melody, and they sing together in kind of a round, or a canon. It's also called a canon. So this is an 8-part canon, and it has a 24-bar melody. So the basic melody goes on for 24 measures. After the melody finishes, then the group of instruments starts the melody again, plays for a measure before the next voice comes in. So there are 25 bars before another group of instruments come in. So the melody keeps repeating itself. After 25 bars, another group of instruments come in and they play against each other until you got 8 separate parts playing together at the same time. This may sound a little confusing and everything, but it's not like what you think. It really starts to build and build and build. Now, Gorercki was getting into the minimalist stage, so there's not a lot of not a lot of double forte or extra loud passages, but it does tend to build, kind of like a post-rock song or something like that. It tends to build until it gets to a climax, and then it cools off. So this first section continues on like that, and then as it gets to the climax where all of the instruments are playing, then they start to drop off one by one until it finally ends up with just the strings playing, and they play through the melody one last time and then drone on a single note. They hold it out for a while. The second section of this, now this lasts probably about 13 minutes or so. This is the first section. The second section consists of where the soprano finally comes in to the music. Up to this point, it's all been instrumental. The soprano comes in on that sustained note that the strings are holding and starts to sing the melody based on Mary's lament. And things again start to build more and more with the orchestra and the singer until they reach a beautiful climax. And the original canon melody comes back on top of all of this. The third section starts another canon. This time it starts out with all the instruments playing, all the parts playing, all at once, and then each one tends to drop off and drop off until nothing is left except for the lower strings and a piano. So anyway, through all this, you've got this beautiful, just indescribable movement that goes on for 27 minutes, and you don't even realize how the time passes, because it's just, you just want to keep listening. It just draws you right in. The soprano, the singer doesn't sing very much in this first movement. It is mostly instrumental, and there's probably only 3 or 4 minutes of vocalization through the entire first movement, but it's still just lovely. I mean, it's one of those things you have to listen to. I am familiar with a lot of classical music, but I had never heard this one before, this symphony, and I tell you, I become a big fan of it, and it's going to be one that I'm going to be looking for, especially this particular rendition of it. Moving on to the second movement. The second movement is called Lento e Largo Tranquillissimo, and it's 9 minutes, so quite a bit shorter than the first movement. This one is based upon a prayer that was inscribed on the wall of a cell by an 18-year-old girl who was being held in she was being held in a cell waiting to be transported to go by train, probably to a concentration camp, is what I'm assuming. While she was there in that cell, she probably had an idea of what her fate was going to be. She wrote a prayer on the wall of that cell, and the prayer was both to the Mother Mary and also to her own mother. So there's the mother-child relationship that seems to run through the entire symphony. It turns out to be a good ending to the story, because the person the girl that wrote the inscription on the wall of the cell, which she actually wrote from one of her own broken teeth. That's what she used to scratch the wall of the cell. She on the way to where she was being transported on the train, apparently some rebels came and stopped the train and helped the prisoners escape. So she was able to escape, and she made it back to her homeland. Actually, was married and lived a full life afterwards. But so it turns out to have a good ending. But this particular second movement is based upon that inscription that was found in the cell. Gorercki actually found that inscription and decided to use it. And come to find out, he was able to contact the person that wrote the inscription. But this second movement is simply the most emotional, and one of the most emotional and beautiful movements in all of classical music. It just draws you right in, and you can't help but feel the emotion, especially when you know the story behind it all. Again, like I say, it's a shorter track of the three, but it goes by quickly, just like the rest of it does, and just one of those things you have to listen to. Just beautiful. The third movement is also called Lento, again slow, Cantibile Semplice, or simple and melodic. This one is a 17-minute duration, and it deals with a mother who is mourning her son who was lost in the war. This one consists of a lot of mostly undetectable changes as far as the way it builds. It builds a lot less noticeably. So it uses dynamics, but it's not as major as a dynamic change as what it was in the last two movements. It's actually based on a melody in Poland that comes from Poland, about a mother mourning her son that she lost in the war. Now there's a repetitive chord change that keeps going back and forth, and that And I love that feeling because it gives you a feeling of maybe rocking back and forth slowly, almost like the mother's cradling her son. Um, and it's very lovely and emotional uh, music. Of course, like the rest of it, it's pretty much composed in a major scale, or a minor scale, sorry. The nice thing about this movement is the sudden change to a major scale long into the song, long into the movement. And it's kind of like where the mother starts to realize that, hey, my son still lives in another dimension, or he's with the angels, that sort of thing. And she sings her thanksgiving to the fact that she knows her son lives on somewhere. And when that changes from the minor to major scale, it's just so uplifting. It just moves you so much. And as she sings the last stanza of that melody, you just hear her sudden joy and everything. Um, I mean, just amazing stuff. So I highly recommend this. Even though it has all the indications that it's not going to be something you might not enjoy, I've heard a lot of different people review this, especially in the vinyl community, who Dave has already talked to, or already challenged this symphony to, and I understand why this symphony is so important to him, because it is one of the most beautiful things, one of the most beautiful classical pieces I've heard, and it's definitely something I'm going to be searching out. So, nice job, David. This was beautiful, just simply beautiful. So, the second part of the three-way challenge is Guz69 challenged us to listen to a band from Brazil called Labrinto. And the name of the album, I think, is Gehenna. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Gehenna or Gehenna. Gehenna. This band, I noticed, is made up of two main guitarists, and then a third person that also plays guitars and also some synthesizers, bass, drums, and percussion. So we got 6 members of this band. This is great Brazilian metal, a great Brazilian metal band that plays kind of a sludgy yet atmospheric post-metal. I compare it to the band Pelican, another post-metal band, but this band goes one step even further in that Pelican, I've always complained a little bit that they have one dynamic and it's almost all double forte, mostly a wall of noise. I like listening to them, but it kind of wears on you after a while, that constant barrage of noise. However, this band uses dynamics much better. There's lots of louds, there's lots of soft sections, and there's lots of places where it builds like it usually does in post-metal and post-rock. But you got your layered guitars with just the right touch of synthesizer in there, and almost gives it a symphonic feel at some points. Very dramatic, very dynamic, and very progressive. They use a lot of different, the fact that they use dynamics, first of all, so well makes it progressive, but also the fact that they do have some tempo changes, they do have some meter changes throughout the music, and that's what makes it so enjoyable to me. This is another great band, one that I'll be looking into a lot more. And this one is made up of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think, 8 or 9 tracks. And like I say, it's kind of thick, heavy, and dark, but it isn't always that way. There's a lot of quieter sections throughout the music. Like I said, it's similar to Pelican with a sludgy, slow beat. but then again, they do use tempo changes, so not all of the tracks are heavy and loud. Excuse me. So you've got all these different tracks. I think the first and the last tracks are the longest on here. And I listened to this on Bandcamp. So if you go to Bandcamp and look this band up, the first track comes with a video you can watch. The video mostly has to do with the movement of waves crashing against a shore, and it's very darkened, mostly black and white. Kind of helps with the atmosphere of the whole thing, but I'm fine just listening to it on its own. So it's quite dark. It does feature a nice change in the middle of the first track, about halfway through. Kind of a change of direction. It still remains dark, but at the same time it picks up a little bit. There's a lot more of a riff-oriented feel to this music than there is to a lot of post-metal. Post-metal usually follows off of one riff, where this one is more of a memorable, use more memorable style riffs. They base their melody, they base their improvisation off of these riffs, and that's what makes it really interesting. Lots of places where they build in tension. They make things start kind of soft and slow, and then build in, putting layers upon layers, making things louder, kind of like what you would expect in a lot of post-metal. But like I say, there's a lot of surprises in here too, where they just all of a sudden go into a more melodic style. That's what keeps me interested in this music and keeps me listening to it. They do use a little bit of spoken word through there, but it sounds more like a field recording than anything else. Other than that, it's all instrumental. There's some ambient sections in there that build up to louder sections. There are other tracks where it just stays soft all the way through. I mean, there's a lot of variety on this for a post-metal style band. Again, this is another one that I would highly recommend. Neither one of these were actually out of my comfort zone. I love classical music, and I especially love experimental classical music. And I loved hearing how David's selection used both to its advantage. I really enjoyed that. I listened to a lot of post-metal. I've listened to a lot of post-rock, and a lot of those also fit in the progressive vein. So I've heard a lot of different bands like this, but I had never heard of Labrinto before. Thumbs up on both of these. I give them good reviews. I think they're both albums that you need to check out. So I'm sorry if this dragged on too long, but had a lot to say about both of them. And thank you to both Garage Geek David and Guz69 for letting me join in on this out of my comfort zone series, and hopefully we'll do some more. I think we were planning on doing one of these once a week. So thank you for watching, and check out these channels, and also check out these albums that they both suggested. All right, we'll talk to you later.